time is ticking for Yuki Tsunoda. With Red Bull's decision to drop Honda, his future now hangs in the balance. So what does that mean for the future of poor little Yuki Tsunoda? Despite consistently outperforming his seasoned teammate Daniel Ricciardo this season, Yuki's journey in Formula One is facing newer challenges. I decided to investigate his performances, his temper, and where he might end up if he does end up leaving Red Bull's sister team. So Yuki's now in his 4th year in Formula One, and throughout that time, he's always been with the Red Bull sister team, now RB, firmly backed by Honda. But now that Red Bull have dropped Honda for 2026 onwards and seemingly written off Tsunoda from ever driving in the main team, where does Yuki go? While his plans beyond this season are yet to be decided, his current team boss Laurent Mekies has praised him for making big steps so far in 2024, which he has. If we look at the comparison between Tsunoda and Ricciardo, Yuki currently sits in 10th with 19 points, whilst Ricciardo is down in 14th with only 5. Now, of course, points don't always tell the full story, but in this case, Yuki has been consistently the better driver, outmatching his more experienced teammate. Yuki has majorly upped his game this season. If Magnussen didn't take him out in China, he would have finished every single race, and his consistency has been incredible, with his lowest finish being 15th in Saudi Arabia. But that finish is where Yuki's main downside comes in, his temper. Now, of course, it's normal for F1 drivers to be blunt or hot-headed. The task of driving one of the fastest cars in the world around at breakneck speeds for hours is stressful. But in the case of Tsunoda, he tends to stand out over the rest of the drivers, and not in a good way. In moments where something might not go to plan or something's more difficult, it's normal to be angry or frustrated. But what differentiates a great driver is being able to effectively channel those emotions back into the race and getting the job done. Again, there's nothing wrong with being emotional in the moment, but for Yuki, these moments seem to always end with him making a poor decision in reaction. Now, you most likely already know where I'm going with this, but if you don't, here's a throwback to the 2024 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where Tsunoda was battling the Haas of Kevin Magnussen for P12 on lap 52 of 57. The team asked him to let Ricciardo through to give Ricciardo the chance to overtake Magnussen. Yuki seemed very, very annoyed at this, and he held up Daniel before he ended up letting him pass. Yuki, however, was very displeased with the team order, and over the radio, he voiced this. He then appeared to dive bomb his teammate on the cooldown lap, following the checkered flag, before coming back on the track and narrowly avoiding contact with Ricciardo. And this is all over a non-points finish in a backmarker team. It really raises the question of how Yuki could ever cope with racing in a title fight. If this incident had not occurred, Yuki's position would have been magnitudes better in both the public opinion and the eyes of all future employers. So, speaking of future employers, where could Yuki end up if he leaves RB? Honda CEO Koji Watanabe recently said that the engine manufacturer hoped to keep an eye on Tsunoda, even when they split from Red Bull and link up with Aston Martin. The 24-year-old graduated from Honda Racing School in 2016, and since he has received support from the company his entire journey to Formula One and in it. Recently though, Yuki has been putting on a good show. When we compare Yuki to Daniel in the 2024 Formula One season, the stats tell a clear story. As of 8 rounds in, Yuki leads with 19 points to Daniel's 5. In qualifying, Yuki has consistently outperformed Daniel, winning their head-to-head 7-1. The average qualifying gap is around 0.2 seconds per lap in Yuki's favour, and the race performances further underscore this trend. But the Red Bull management seem to have zero interest in promoting Tsunoda any further, even willing to look outside of their driver pool if they need to. So what options does Yuki have if he wants to see success in Formula One? Well, to start with, I wanted to run through the teams which I don't expect to see Tsunoda race for anytime soon. I can't imagine a Mercedes, a Ferrari, or Red Bull picking up Tsunoda, especially when Mercedes seem gung-ho on Kimi Antonelli and they've got George Russell firmly in the other seat. Meanwhile, Ferrari's got Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc at the moment, with Ollie Behrman in the background ready to go. McLaren, Sauber, Williams, they all have drivers locked in contracts, or they're already talking with others on the grid. For Sauber, Audi, Stake, whatever you want to call them, I'm expecting them to run Hülkenberg and Sainz. Williams have Albon signed until 2026, and they're even in talks with Bottas over signing him over. And possibly even Sainz, if Sainz chooses Williams over Audi. We gotta wait and see what happens there. But we can't talk about a Red Bull driver without talking about Red Bull. The normal pathway to stardom for a Red Bull sister team driver is to perform well and be ready to join the main team when your time is ready. But for Yuki Tsunoda, it doesn't seem he'll ever be in a position where he'll get that call. With Max Verstappen firmly leading the whole sport and Perez doing a good enough job at the moment to secure his seat, it would take a major shake-up for Horner and the team to change their minds on Tsunoda. I also feel like a Max and Yuki team would have a very, very poor dynamic, leading to more drama and clashes, which I'm sure Horner doesn't want. I'm not convinced Perez will keep his seat, but I'm convinced at least that Yuki is not going to be getting it, based on recent mojo in the paddock and his recent performances. But I do think there's some teams Yuki might actually end up at. So what we'll do is we'll go through them one by one in no particular order, and I'll throw my predictions at the end. So I mentioned that I'd throw my predictions at the end, but Aston Martin is definitely up there as far as potential teams go. We've got Alonso with Aston Martin on a multi-year deal, so at least until the end of 2026, and the other driver on the grid, Lance Stroll, his deal is seemingly unknown, but as long as his father Lawrence Stroll has a say, it's safe to assume that his seat is always going to be his and is one of the safest in the sport. But that's assuming Lawrence doesn't sell. And there's recently been a lot of reports that Lawrence is trying to sell 25% of his shares in Aston Martin, as the team's valuation is over $1.3 billion. And if that's the case, Yuki could slot in right next to Alonso from 2026, in line with the Aston Martin Honda deal, as Honda will be supplying Aston Martin engines from 2026 onwards. It all seems too perfect, and I get a feeling that Alonso would be a good role model for Yuki and someone to learn a lot from, as long as Yuki doesn't get in Alonso's way. Now, moving on to another option, we have Haas. They currently need 2 drivers, with Hulk on the way to Audi Sauber and K-Mag likely out of F1 altogether. Currently, it's rumored that Ocon might be joining, but either way, there's a lot of speculation here, and they have 2 open seats. I can't imagine it's going to be Yuki's first option, but if he has nothing else lining up, I think he could definitely get a seat here. In addition, we've got Ayo Komatsu, who's the team principal, and Yuki. I think that could be a good pairing. Japanese team principal, Japanese driver, it might mesh well. But if I was Yuki, I'd definitely be looking into other options first. Now, absolute curveball here, but I think Alpine might even be a choice for Yuki Tsunoda, with Ocon currently on very thin ice with the team, and there's reports that he might even be benched for Jack Doan at the moment. It could open the door for Tsunoda with the French outfit. However, Alpine has a very strong young driver academy at the moment, so I'm pretty doubtful on this one, especially with Alpine trying to shoe in Jack Doan for that seat as of today. And I don't blame them at all. When we look at the past, they lost Piastri and Alonso in that nightmare driver situation, and I'm sure they don't want to end up losing another up-and-coming rookie to one of their competitors. Now, we've covered most of the teams. I think I did miss McLaren, but they're just out of the question. But there is one other option. We've got VCarb. Depending how everything goes, Yuki's best option might end up being staying with VCarb, RB, whatever you want to call them. At the moment, they've got a good trajectory in the midfield, and they seem to have one of the fastest cars, at least in comparison to many of Yuki's other options. They look like a clear contender for top of the midfield this season, and so far for Yuki, it's all been going well. I can't imagine going from VCarb with good momentum to a backmarker team like Haas sounds like a good thing, especially when Yuki's known to be a little bit hot-headed, so I can't imagine that's good for his mental state. Personally, I think Yuki's going to remain with VCarb RB for 2025 before planning a move to Aston Martin for 2026 alongside Honda and Alonso. It makes the most sense timeline-wise, sponsor-wise, and overall fit-wise. We've got Honda, who's already backed Yuki his entire career, and surely Stroll has to move on from F1 at some point. It's becoming a joke, but that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and watch my video on the day that changed Daniel Ricciardo forever on screen now.